Level 1. Ibyong. You are 17. The letter arrives on a gray Thursday morning in Hamhung, South Hamgyong Province, delivered by a courier who doesn't wait for a response because none is required. Your father reads it standing in the doorway, folds it exactly once, and sets it on the shelf beside the portrait, as if placing it anywhere else in the house would make it more real than it already is. 3 weeks later, a military truck idles outside the district office before sunrise. 19 boys climb aboard in total silence. You recognize a boy named Ri Chang-ho from 2 streets over, a boy who once beat you at marbles so badly you didn't speak to him for a month. Neither of you says anything now. The truck drives for 11 hours into the mountains of Chagang Province, climbing until the air itself feels thinner and colder than anything you've breathed before. The training compound sits inside a ring of pine forest, 60 men to a barracks, iron bunks bolted 3 high to a concrete wall. Your instructor, Sergeant Pak, has a voice that never rises above a normal speaking volume, which somehow makes every word land harder than shouting would. A soldier who breaks on wood, he tells your row on the first morning, holding up a plain wooden training rifle, was never going to hold steel anyway. You run before sunrise every day carrying that wooden rifle, boots stiff with frost. Food is corn porridge twice daily, thin enough to see the bottom of the bowl through it. By the 3rd week, hunger stops announcing itself. It simply becomes the room you live in. Every Saturday evening, your company sits in a circle for the self-criticism session, and you learn within your first month exactly how this works. You confess something small and true enough to survive scrutiny. You lost focus during the political reading. Your marching form slipped on the final mile. You watch the other recruits carefully, memorizing who confesses too easily and who resists, because that information will matter far longer than anyone tells you it will. After 12 weeks, a single narrow stripe is sewn onto your collar. You are now officially a unit of manpower the system does not need to know by name, and you understand, with a clarity that surprises you, that surviving here means becoming very good at being forgettable. Level 2, Sangbyong. You are 20, 3 years in, stationed near the demilitarized zone in a unit that patrols a stretch of hills where, on clear mornings, you can see mountains belonging to a country you were taught to hate before you could read. Your rifle is a domestically produced Type 88, and every one of your 30 monthly practice rounds is logged by serial number against your name. Lose track of a single round and the paperwork trail runs 3 signatures deep. You patrol the same 6 kilometers twice a day with a soldier named Jang Sumin, 22, from a fishing village on the east coast, who talks constantly in a way that feels almost dangerous in its ordinariness. One afternoon, during a rest stop, Sumin mentions in the same easy tone he uses for everything that his sister works at a textile plant that hasn't run at full capacity in over a year because the power keeps cutting out. He says it the way people say things they've been carrying quietly for a long time and finally need to set down somewhere. You write it up that evening in the flattest language you can manage, expressed mild concern regarding regional industrial conditions, likely related to family matters, no further action indicated. You never learn whether your wording protected him or whether the comment simply wasn't significant enough for anyone above you to pursue. That uncertainty follows you for years. Your quarterly evaluation uses a single word, observant. You understand by now that in this army, observant isn't a compliment about perception. It's confirmation that you've learned exactly what the system requires of you. Level 3, Byongjang. You are 22, given charge of a section of 8 younger soldiers, most in their first year. You inspect their boots, their rifles, their weekly political study notebooks, a minimum of 3 entries, and anything less is a failure that reflects on you before it reflects on them. During self-criticism sessions, you no longer sit inside the circle. You sit at the edge and watch for the signals your political officer reads before he reads them himself. Who hesitates, who confesses too fast, who stares at the floor during someone else's turn. One of your soldiers, a quiet 18-year-old named Kim Tae-yang, struggles consistently, his confessions flat and unconvincing in a way the political officer marks as concerning. After the 3rd week, Lieutenant Choi pulls you aside and asks what you've observed. You describe Tae-young carefully. Reliable during physical training, simply slow to translate study into spoken conviction, and suggests supplementary sessions rather than a formal notation. Chui writes it down and tells you, you see clearly. Within a month, Tae-yang's performances are indistinguishable from anyone else's. You never know for certain whether you protected him or simply gave the system something to act on while keeping your own section's numbers intact. Your year-end evaluation carries one word, reliable. In this army, no word costs more or means more. Level 4, Hasa. You are 25 when a selection officer spends 2 days reading personnel files at your battalion, and your name appears on a list you never asked to be part of. One chevron above your old stripes, non-commissioned officer, permanently part of the structure now rather than passing through it. You're reassigned to a mechanized infantry regiment where your weekly coordination meetings reveal something invisible from the ranks below. The company political officer, Captain Yoon, holds equal authority to your commander on every decision that touches ideology, which turns out to mean nearly every decision. After your first joint meeting, your commander tells you flatly, you'll learn what to report and what to manage quietly yourself. You already know how, you've known since Byungjang. What's different now is scale, and the fact that every file this creates carries your signature permanently. Level 5. Sangsa. You are 29, 14 years deep into a life the civilian world has no real equivalent for anymore. 3 chevrons, command of training for a company of over 100 men. During a combined exercise 8 kilometers from the southern border, a soldier fractures his ankle on a night march. You log the incident cleanly, time, name, injury, approval, and the next morning the regimental political officer asks one quiet question during the debrief. Was the training load appropriate leading up to the march? The training calendar has your name on every page. You cite the approved framework by document number without hesitation. He writes something down and moves on, and nothing more comes of it that week. But the question stays with you, because you've learned by now that an answer accepted today is not the same thing as an answer forgotten tomorrow. Files never forget. Your evaluation reads, thorough command of procedure. Thorough, administrative, not distinguished. You know precisely what that distinction means for what comes next. Level 6, SOE. You are 33 when you're commissioned, unusually late, since most officers enter through the academies at 22. Captain Yoon, the same officer who once watched you manage Tae Yang's file years ago, wrote the recommendation without telling you until after it was confirmed. During your 12-week officer course, you watch a sharp young cadet named Han deliver a political analysis with more confidence and unrequested historical detail than the assignment called for. The instructor thanks him without expression. 2 days later, Han is summoned to a private meeting, and every analysis he delivers afterward is shorter and considerably less distinctive. When your own analysis is reviewed, the instructor says simply, clear, appropriate. You understand exactly what he means. At this level, exceeding what the system asked for isn't an asset, it's a question, and questions here take weeks to reveal their cost. Level 7. Daewoo. You are 38, commanding a company of over 100 men near the eastern coast. Close enough to see the sea on clear days, though no one ever mentions it aloud. A general staff inspection team spends 10 days auditing your unit, and on the 7th day, an inspector flags a discrepancy. 17 rounds unaccounted for across 3 training sessions, logged under the wrong classification. You produce the correct documentation within the hour. The final assessment reads, satisfactory, with minor administrative variance noted. You pass. But variance noted means permanent record, and over the following weeks you reorganize your entire filing system so that no training activity, however small, ever sits under an ambiguous code again. Not out of fear exactly, out of a clearer understanding now of how thin the line actually is between a filing error and a career-ending notation. Level 8. Daryong. You are 44, transferred to Pyongyang with 4 silver stars, working inside the General Staff's Operations Directorate. Your job is comparing field readiness reports against independent data, and the gap between what's reported and what's real is architectural, built into every level below you and quietly agreed upon as necessary. A unit reports 94% readiness. Satellite data suggests 78. Your superior, reviewing your weekly summary, changes 2 figures upward with a pen in under a minute and hands it back without a word. You begin keeping 2 versions of every report, the true one locked in a drawer that offers no real protection, and the adjusted one that travels upward. You keep the true version anyway, not as evidence, but as a private record that someone, somewhere, still knows exactly how large the gap is. Level 9. Yungjang. You are 51, 2 gold stars, commanding 40,000 troops across 4 divisions. At a briefing in a compound where phones are surrendered at the gate, you notice an empty chair. A general who sat there for over a decade is simply absent, his name unmentioned. The meeting proceeding on schedule as if the chair had always been empty. Weeks later, through a careful indirect channel, you learn he made one comment in a closed session, documented as reflecting insufficient confidence in leadership judgment. 36 years of service, reassigned to a facility with no classified access at 58 years old. One sentence, wrong room, wrong audience. You think about Sumin's comment on a hillside patrol decades ago, about Han's overqualified analysis, about the pen crossing your own figures in under a minute. Every collapse you've witnessed traces back to the same gap between what a person actually believed and what the system required them to perform in that exact moment. Level 10. Daejang. You are 56 when two officers arrive at your quarters at 6:50 on a Wednesday morning, polite and procedural, to inform you a review has been initiated. A missile readiness figure certified under your command 2 years earlier, reported at 91%, and internal audit now placing it at 73, carries your signature as the certifying authority. The review lasts 9 weeks in a quiet, isolated government facility, which turns out to be the actual punishment. At the end of it, a junior aide hands you a single reassignment document without meeting your eyes. Senior advisory role, a regional military education facility in Hamhung, the same province you left at 17. Within 3 weeks, your name is removed from the active registry, and your portrait comes down from the corridor you walked for years. You now teach young lieutenants who take careful notes and have no idea who you were. One evening, a lieutenant asks what separates an officer who rises from one who doesn't. You tell him, knowing the difference between what you believe and what you say, and he writes it down as wisdom. He isn't wrong, but it isn't the whole truth either. 39 years inside a structure built to extract loyalty from everyone at every level taught you this. The men who climbed highest were never the most loyal. They were simply the most precise about when to show it, when to hide it, and when to make certain someone else's name sat one line above their own before the order ever arrived. You were good at that for a very long time, until, on one ordinary Wednesday morning, you weren't.